Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky to episode of Worlds to Conquer, and let's get sticky today. I want to talk to you about organizational stickiness. So stickiness when it comes to businesses, goods, and services. In the business world, we use the word sticky to refer to a company's ability to get their clients coming back for more and more. The concept becomes really crucial in various industries, especially when it comes to financial services, because several factors contribute to creating business stickiness that you have to be aware of as a financial advisor. If you have an RIA, this becomes really particularly important. If you are with a BD or a wirehouse, a bigger organization, clients might be sticky to that particular brand. They might really like only working with Edward Jones because their parents worked with Edward Jones or Raymond James or so forth. They might like that big name recognition. But especially you independent people out there in the RIA space, custodians aren't anyone that you're married to for the rest of your life. Custodians are there to custodian money. They offer you a service for a fee, and you get to make a buying decision whether or not your client's assets stay with that particular custodian. So how do you create stickiness as a financial advisor? And I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to tackle this topic with you because one of the things that I was doing this time of year, the year comes to conclusion and we're wrapping up and we're planning for next year. We're doing all of our goal setting, all those kind of things, is I always look at across all of the businesses and I get my key financial pulse points. And that is, what is the information that pertains to me? What do I care about with that particular industry? So when it comes to our RIA, Shalansky & Associates up in Anchorage, Alaska, I'm looking at top line numbers, right? I want to see my gross revenue. I want to see cost of goods sold. I want to see net profitability. I want to make sure that marginally I'm staying in certain percentages. What does that mean? My payroll. I don't like my payroll above 35%. That's sustainable to me. I have a responsibility to keep the business operating. And that means we have a lot of staff at Shalansky & Associates. We have a lot of team members. And those team members, in fact, I think somebody just asked me recently, I think we're getting really close to about 20 team members for our RIA up in Anchorage, Alaska. And that's a big team. A lot of people out there have one or two. If you're a solo advisor, you might have one or two people on your team, maybe one full-time, one part-time. So when you get to those kind of numbers, you really have to keep track of the expenses. And you have to make sure, because financial advisors, we have the ability, we are always wanting to throw human capital at problems. You know, I didn't hit my numbers because I don't have enough people. I didn't deliver value to my clients because I don't have enough people. I don't have enough resources. I don't have all these things. And that may or may not be true. I think if you have the right team members, you can, it's world freaking domination. But when it comes to our top line numbers that I'm looking at, I'm also looking at retention. And so we keep a new client log, we keep a lost client log, and I want to look at it for various reasons. That's good stewardship over our marketing plan. We want to make sure that we're doing top of the funnel, you know, how many people are getting information on our brand and our particular niche. And then how many are requesting appointments, how many are coming in for those appointments, how many referrals do we get? And then there's the other side of it. The other side of it is a lost client. And a lost client is somebody that engaged our services. So to be considered a client, we have to have two things. We have to have a written agreement in place and we have to have an exchange of money. Those are the two things that make you a client of our firm. And when we have a lost client, that can happen for one of three reasons normally. Unfortunately, the client died. Floyd and I had a lot of lost clients this year. We've been to a lot of wakes, a lot of funerals, just because we have a particular band, an age band in our book of business that it's just time. Unfortunately, it's time to say goodbyes to people that we're not ready to say goodbye to. So we have that natural attrition. And the next reason is we might graduate a client. We might get to the end of the financial planning and we've helped them as much as we can. And so it's time for us to conclude that services. They might not be a good fit for our business. We might not be the right one that they need to. For us, our screenability, I call it my would I get a glass of wine with this person or not test, but it's the 3 Ps. Are you personal? Are you productive? Are you profitable? I got to like you. We've got to be able to make progress. And I have to charge you what our minimum fee is, because otherwise I'm doing a disservice to everyone else who is subsidizing you. I'm not a big fan of subsidization. It happens to most of us financial advisors out there. We're subsidizing our book where our top book is paying for everyone else. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I know it happens. And I know it happens because we have really big hearts and we want to help people. And so I'm always kind of keeping track of that. And so then we have the lost client for somebody that just doesn't want to work with us anymore. And so as I look at the book of business with financial advisors, I'm looking at those numbers, and it's really easy to pull up the household and to justify it, to go, oh, well, I'm not working with them because blah, 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 blah. If a client leaves you and they were somebody that you allowed to remain a client, then they did hit your 3 Ps. They were somebody that you wanted to do business with. You're just justifying why it's not working, because otherwise you would have graduated them. That's how we say fire a client at Schlein Associates. We graduate you. Endings don't have to be bad. You don't have to stop working with financial advisor. You're just going to stop working with our financial advisory firm. So when it comes to this level of stickiness, and I see a financial advisor start to have a lot of lost clients, that gives me a chance to pump the brakes and say, and what is a lot? In our office, if we look kind of statistically across the board for financial advisors, I would say that most financial advisors, if you are top producing financial advisor, you're bringing on 10 to 12 clients a year. 10 to 12, those are the numbers. If you are A game, top level, that's what you're crushing. Anyone, kind of in the bandwidth of 5 to 10, that's a really great performing financial advisor who's just about to level up normally. They're on their way to that 10 and 12. If you don't know how to get there, then you should definitely join our membership program, Invictus. And Micah and I will show you exactly how you take 10 and make it 12 to 15. And then you have anyone that's bringing on kind of less than 5, which are still really good numbers, especially if you don't have a really defined marketing channel or referral program for your clients. So if I have a financial advisor who's bringing on 5 clients a year, but they're losing 6, I have a problem. We need to figure out what's happening. Now, we can't control death. So if the client died, that was one thing. If you graduated the client, okay, no problem. But if it's not, if it's that third category, if the client's leaving your service because they're no longer impressed with what you're doing, now we got to figure out why. And we have to be really, really unbiased in that. And that's why creating stickiness of your business is so important, because when we saturate ourselves in the client's lives, when we deliver so much value for the client, and we make it really personal, really human for them, that's going to create a level of stickiness that they don't want to make a change. Think about how many people are only adequately satisfied with their CPAs, but they stay because they don't want to go through the hassle of making a change. And this is true of bank accounts. One of our local bank accounts gave me my first car loan, so I kept a couple of accounts there. And they were recently changed, merged, did a whole bunch of acquisitions, and now they're a bigger conglomerate. And I want to move banks. I am no longer, feel emotionally tied to them. They're not the small town bank that I liked. And so I'd like to move bank to where, some of my larger funds are Capital One and Bank of America. Now, I haven't pulled the trigger on it. Why? Because it's a hassle, because it is such a hassle to have to do this. And so I know I'm going to have to take at least half a day for 3 weeks, and I have to make sure everything transfers over okay. Everything gets updated. I'm doing my transfer on desk. The accounts are named the way that I want them to. I'm going to have to change where things are deposited. I'm going to have to change where things are debited from. It's a hassle. So the bank has me on a default stickiness because I know that it's additional work to make any type of change with them. So it's one part of things. All right. Now, the second part of the stickiness is when you just really like working with somebody, and so you don't want to make a change because you've made a personal connection. So this becomes the quality product or service offer. And if you're offering a quality product or service, that's one level of stickiness. Clients have a need, you have a unique selling proposition, and you are able to fill that need. So they come to you knowing that you are able to provide them with a particular product or service that they are in need of. Clients don't hire you for shits and grins. They don't do that. Like, they actually want something from you that you have the God-given ability to give them. So you really want to make sure that you have that narrowed down. If you haven't taken time and wrote down what your unique selling proposition is, you should. My best advice to do this is get out a sheet of paper. If you're a Shalansky, 3M pads materialize every room we walk into, and I would draw it out and I would put a line down the center, and on the left-hand side, I would say one of a kind, and on the right-hand side, I'd say one of many. So if you start rattling off things with, I'm honest, I would hope so. That's table stake. That goes on the one of many. You are not the only financial advisor who's honest out there or touting that they are honest out there. So that makes you one of many. If you say, oh, I only work with pre-retirees, that also makes you one of many. That is not unique. But if you say, you know what, I only work with pre-retirees that used to be executive at Boeing and still live in the Washington area. Okay. All right, now we're really defining your niche. Now we're getting down to that unique selling proposition. All right, so you have your market. What do you do that is one of a kind versus one of many? So at Shalansky & Associates and Jarvis Financial Services, what makes us one of a kind is our ability to deliver massive value. And then on a quarterly basis, we're going to be providing our clients with value adds. And those value adds go one step above. So many financial advisors out there, you're just concentrated on the assets. You're just looking at market movement. You're just looking at those investments. There are other areas of financial planning that are really important to your clients. And so one of the big things is that if you live by the markets, you're going to die by the markets. So instead of concentrating only on the markets, we sort of redirect the client's attention to all areas of their finance, not just the markets. Markets are an important part of the conversation. They're not the only conversation. So it's a unique selling proposition of working with our firm. So as you go through this experience, you'll be able to say, what makes me unique? And if you're not sure, if you've got a lot of head trash, if you're kind of in your head about this, call your mom. She'll tell you why you're unique. Call that person who's rooting in your corner. Oftentimes, while spouses are supportive, it's not productive to bring them into this conversation, but to each their own. You were warned. Now, a second element of creating this level of stickiness for clients is their experience, is their customer experience. And it's you as the financial advisor, you set the tone, but it's really all of your team. It's all of your team. So I'm going to talk to you about two ways that makes a make or break experience. So as the financial advisor, one of the very first things, our meetings go for 60 minutes. We try to wrap up by 1:45, so that way we can conclude, say our goodbyes, etc. But we've sort of had a cadence in our meetings. And the first 15 minutes, we're all, how are you? How are the kids? Bob and Sue, did, little Timmy get married? How was the wedding? Oh, do you have pictures? I'd love to see. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful bride. That's incredible. And so we're really saying, diving into the client's lives. What's going on with them and their family and their faith and in their health? Do we have any of those type of concerns? No, actually, I've got a knee surgery replacement coming up. Oh, you know what? My mom had both of her knees replaced. I've got a list of items that I found really, really helpful to have on home before she came out of her surgery. Would you like me to get you that list? Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. Thank you. I've been asking my doctor and they just gave me this pamphlet, but it really doesn't talk about any of those things. Great. I'd be happy to get that to you. I shared a little bit of information, right? My mom had both her knees replaced, but it wasn't about me. So listen to what I did there. The client says, oh, I'm going to go in for a knee replacement. Oh, my mom had both of her knees replaced. I know that I didn't get a lot of information from the doctor, but I created a list of items that were really helpful to have at home when she came back. Would you like me to get you that list? It's not about you. It's about them. And so I didn't go on and on about what my experience was like. I said, hey, you've told me something. I have a relatable event and I have a way to help you. In that meeting, in that conference room, it is not about you. It is about the client. And if you want to create stickiness, you are listening for opportunities. You have clients that say, oh, I'm headed to Croatia. I was there recently in 2019. I had a wonderful time. Please, make sure you see X, Y, and Z. Could I give you any travel tips? I'm not going on and on about, oh, we want to see my pictures from Croatia. This is what I did. I'm looking at the client and saying, what kind of experience do you want to have? I have a client that plays the violin and has long time been in several orchestras in town and has traveled across nationally. And I said, hey, when you're in Croatia, did you know there's a celloist that will take you to a cave in the seaside and he'll play the cello and the cave will be an amplifier to the sound? And he said, my gosh, I had no idea. That would be an amazing experience. Now, that is me giving the client something that relates to them. So I'm always looking for an opportunity to learn more, hear more, do more for the client. But just because I have something to fall back on, I wasn't going on and on or showing them my pictures of those experiences. I wanted to hear about their experiences. I wanted to be immersed in their lives. The conversation in that meeting is not about you. It's about them. And here's a telltale sign. Oftentimes, if you're sitting there with a client and you're going on and on about the markets or the economy, because they start it, they ask you the question, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to have a recession? What do you think are going on with the markets? It's been kind of flat. What do you think, is on the horizon with all this geopolitical stuff, blah, blah, blah. They'll start some big, large, macro picture question. And then you'll start diving into information because we're financial advisors and we're such nerds and we love talking about these things and we love like following it, etc. But then about, a third of your way through where you really want to dive into the subject, their eyes start glossing over and they might say something like, how does this affect me? Or am I in a good position? Are we going to take advantage? Am I okay if those things you're saying happen? It is about them. And if they don't say it, we'll turn the conversation and say, okay, regardless of all the stuff that we can't control, let's now focus back and we'll have the value add in front of us on what you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, are able to control. If those things happen, here's how we're prepared. And so we're always bringing the conversation back to them, because when you are that involved in their lives, when you are that cheerleader, that coach, that guidance counselor, when you are the quarterback, when you are constantly the person at the helm helping them navigate the path of their lives, whatever metaphor you want to use to put yourself in that role, then they are dependent on you, then they are liking this, that you are advocating for them. Now, if they start leaving in droves, if you start losing that level of stickiness, then you need to go back to how you're communicating and how you are connecting with the client during the meeting. Because clients that you are connected with normally don't leave. Clients that feel disconnected from you can easily leave because now you're just that guy. You're just that woman. You're not anyone of any type of significance to them. If your experience with a client is unmemorable, you will be forgotten. Think about that. If you are delivering subpar value, if you are just doing what every other financial advisor does out there and giving them what is pretty much their statement and going over their positions, you're going to be replaced. It will inevitably happen. So how do we stop doing that? When it comes down to that stickiness, that connection, we also are looking for regular updates and improvements. When we do these value adds, we're sending them out on a quarterly basis. If there's something that comes up, like a few years ago, Experian was compromised. Was it Experian or Equifax? I'm pretty sure it was Experian, but they had a big credit breach. So we went out, they put out a URL. They said, go put in your social security and your date of birth and see if your information was compromised. Guess what we did in our office? We had our entire team sit down and we divided our book of business and we started going through every single client's social and putting it inside of this URL. We saw what clients had their credit breached or their personal identifiable information breached and which ones didn't. The ones that did, we sent out a letter. The ones that didn't have it breached, we also sent out a letter to. And our letter was simple. It was one page. It said, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you may have heard there was a major breach in data. We have gone through the trouble of looking at it. Your information, unfortunately, was compromised. Here are the options that you're going to be given in the next couple of days. Here's where you can go check this information for yourself. Here's our recommendation on what kind of credit lock you should put on your social security number. And then conversely, on the ones that didn't have a breach, because if you're a husband and wife and one of you got breached and you get the letter and you're like, oh my gosh, my credit was breached, but the husband didn't get anything and his wasn't breached. And what is his next question? Is mine breached? Did this happen to me too? Why didn't I get a letter? So we followed it up with a letter that said, Mr. Client, you may have heard recently there was a major data breach. The good news, your information was not compromised. However, here's some good tips on data security that we think that you should put into place to keep your information safe going forward. And so we're doing these things and regularly communicating. Now, also, what does that happen? As this information went all over the news, and this was several years ago, so I forget the credit bureau, I apologize. But when it happened, all those people were having conversations with their friends and they said, yeah, my financial advisor reached out to me, and let me know that mine was breached. Your financial advisor contacted you about that? Oh, yeah. They're always looking out for me financially wherever they absolutely can. And it creates this, well, mine doesn't do that. And now we've created a referral environment. We created another level of stickiness constantly. So always making sure that you're reaching out to clients in ways that matter to them, When we send out a quarterly update to our clients, we'll talk a lot about what's happening in the economy, but only highlighting information that pertains to them as individuals. We'll always bring it back to them. There's a lot of question about the US dollar. Here's what it means to you. There's a lot of questions about cryptocurrency. Here's what it means to you. And so we will take that broad brush and we will try to bring it back to the client. And no, those aren't individual letters going going out in which we're writing it, but we'll take that broad context and say, hey, this is why it's important to have your financial plan in place. And this is why it's important to regularly be following it in a dispassionate way. Another layer of creating stickiness is oftentimes you see this in other businesses, which the incentives and loyalty programs, right? Like you might go to the same coffee hut all the time because they give you points and you earn free coffee, whatever this is. Now, in financial services, this becomes far more difficult for us to do because we are so highly regulated. However, we have found a way to do it at Shalansky & Associates where we thank our clients for sending us referrals. So when a client refers somebody to our practice, we'll send the client who made the referral a giant goodie basket from a local bakery and say, thank you so much for the trust that you have placed in us. We really value you making an introduction to this. So we don't have necessarily like these loyalty programs, but we have gratitude programs. We have ways that we can say thank you to our clients and go above and beyond. We also do this with high touches in our office. Our relationship managers are incredibly emotionally intelligent people. And so oftentimes when clients go in for surgeries, our team will be notified. It might not be the financial advisor who's notified, but the relationship manager will be. And the relationship manager sees somebody's going in for a surgery and sends them a weighted blanket, or they send them a box of soup, or they make a really, really unique high touch that fits within the regulation guidelines of what we're allowed to do. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, these aren't season tickets to the Knicks, right? Instead, it's really personable and says, as you recover, here's a box of goodies to snack on. Or your roof just caved in because the snow was too heavy for it and you just returned from vacation. Dinner's on us tonight. Please relax, unwind, and you don't need to do anything. And if you're not good at this, if you're not a good gift giver, and this is a question you should ask your spouse, is, am I a good gift giver? And if you are not a good gift giver, hire somebody else that is. Either do it on a contract basis, use a relationship manager, use a friend or something, but somebody else that can come up with unique, low-cost, high-value items that create another level of connection. And then the other one that is really important, and Ritz-Carlton gets this really, really well when it comes to stickiness, is understanding and anticipated expressed and unexpressed needs. So understanding and anticipating expressed and unexpressed needs. So let me give you an example of what this might mean. So in our office, when we're going through surge and we're meeting with clients, we have a homework sheet, and that homework sheet has some pre-filled out information from our team about the client. This is age, account values, and then also keeps little bullet points of what we talked about last time. So as we're doing appointment prep and we're going through our next meeting, so let's just say for conversation, we met with a client in March and now we're going to meet with them in October. When we met with them in March, they were saying that they're going to need to purchase a new car and they're not sure, but they know that before winter comes, they're going to have to make a decision. So in our October meeting, we might bring up the subject and we might say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, how's it coming on the car front? Have you been able to find a vehicle that you like? And they'll say, oh, you know what? That's just been so exhausting. It's been so difficult to make a decision. We have this vehicle, but the price of vehicles have just gone up so substantially lately. We're just really unsure about making that payment. And so one of the things that we do with retirees, because cash flow is king in retirement, and retirees have a hard time swallowing a car payment. So one of the things that we'll do is instead of buying the car outright, is we'll use funds that we have set aside in cash inside of the IRA because they're probably going to need to make a distribution anyway. And we'll have the IRA make the car payment. And so we'll set it up that it goes directly to whoever they owe that lending through and makes the car payment for them, or it goes directly into their bank account and then they get to make the car payment. So it doesn't impact their cash flow. And so as we're talking to the client, we might say, they say, oh yeah, we settled on this one, but it's going to be $80,000 and the car loan is $800 a month. And I just don't know how we're going to do that. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if we look here on your investments, we'd actually talked about this in the spring and we've been freeing up a little bit of cash so we could do X, Y, and Z over the next 5 years. And they're like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. So what did we do? We listened in that March conversation. We heard the expressed need, and then we inferred the unexpressed need that they are going to need money for this vehicle. And that because that money was going to come out of the IRA, we needed to start having cash available for that. Now, we probably already had cash available because we're really big about keeping 5 years of any distributions we anticipate coming out of the portfolio already in cash. But the client doesn't necessarily know that or understand it, what our process is. Even though we go through the reports, even though they go through the statements, even though they see the cash, they don't always do that correlation. So we want to one more time bring it up to them. And we want to say, hey, we talked about this before. This is where we're at. And this is is what we're able to do. That is listening to their expressed and their unexpressed needs. And because we're so in tune with that, because we're doing the due diligence of writing down the information as they're explaining to us, taking immediate action so that we're prepared for that next appointment. The best appointment prep happens 5 or 10 minutes after the appointment. So that way you're getting geared up and ready for the next time. That's what's creating that brand stickiness. Now, the last item that I'm going to leave you with when it comes to brand stickiness is reputation. Reputation. You have to decide what you stand for and then stand for it all of the time. And one of the reasons that Floyd, Micah, myself, John Raleigh, our protege advisors that are coming up, Christian Sakamoto, JT, Sierra, is that we're all saying the same thing. We just might say it a little bit differently. Sometimes we try to use the exact same language and we'll say, hey, make sure when we're talking to a client, we say this about that. And the reason we do that is that we're really hyperly aware of our brand reputation. If you're talking to one of us, it is the exact same thing as talking to any of us. We might have style nuances, we might have different personalities, but the information that you're getting when it comes to financial planning is going to be consistent throughout our entire organization. And we've really hit home with this with our team that we even give them a vocabulary. Here are the words that we want you to use in client meetings specifically so that when those words are, they're going to hear it talking to somebody else, right? Because clients talk to clients. There's normally friends that meet up. And when they hear those things from other people, they're going to go, oh yeah, you know what? Jamie told me that. Or, oh, that's the same thing Micah told me to do too. And yep, Floyd is always saying that. You sound just like your dad. And so we're constantly having and reinforcing this brand reputation. And that helps create referrals so that when a client refers somebody to somebody else and they say, hey, you know what? They said X, Y, and Z. The client's like, oh yeah, they told me that too. And then they know that when they refer somebody to our office, it's not going to be a completely different experience than anything that they had. We want to make sure that we're providing that consistently and repeatedly, regardless of who you're working with in our organization. Now, how can we do that so seamlessly? Well, I already told you that we like to give a vocabulary, but then right before surge, we'll bring all the financial advisors together and we go through our pre-surge meeting. We'll say, hey, this surge, we're going to talk to clients about X, Y, and Z. Here's how I'm presenting it. Let's all go through and practice. And so we'll practice openly amongst each other. And then here's a daunting question that Micah just asked a group of financial advisors that we were working with, and he was showing how to deliver a value add. They got done. So he pulled one out and said, okay, so-and-so, you're going to present on X, Y, and Z. And so they presented. And at the end, he said, great, based on that presentation, how many of you in the room would transfer your entire life savings to this person? And nobody raised their hand. Nobody raised their hand. So if you're not willing to transfer your entire life savings, then it's not right yet. And you got to go fix it. You got to finesse it. You got to practice it. You got to role play it. You got to do it again and again and again and again, because that's what matters. Now, had somebody raised their hand and said, I would have definitely transferred my life savings to this person, then Micah would have pulled out an ACAT form and said, great, do it now. Do it now. Transfer your life savings to this person, because every time a prospect comes into your office, every time you meet with a client, that is exactly what you are asking them to do. So if you want to be a person that gives advice based on integrity and value, and you have a solid reputation, never, ever forget the significance of what we are doing as financial advisors. What we do matters. We have the greatest job in the entire world because we get to give people actionable advice that has a multi-generational impact. And so it is a gift to give somebody criticism. It is a gift to give them feedback. It is a gift to tell them ways that they can improve, because they're going to sit across from a heartbeat. They're going to sit across from a heartbeat and they're going to ask that heartbeat to do something just some days that I think is unfathomable. Give me your entire life savings. Give me your entire life savings and I will do X, Y, and Z. So always keep those heartbeats in mind. TPR Nation, you know, everything that we do at The Perfect RA is about giving you actionable advice that you can take right now. In this podcast, I hope I gave you a lot of great takeaways about creating your own level of stickiness. And I would say the first action item is what gets measured gets weighed. Are you tracking how many clients you bring on and how many you've lost? If you have lost them, are you going through and doing the hard work of saying, am I saying I'm doing all these things, but not actually doing them? And then pull that out and say, okay, what is the client getting out of this? Am I making sure that I am, having a quality product and experience? Am I delivering customer experiences? Do I have a unique selling proposition? Is there something that makes me different than everybody else? Am I giving regular updates and improvements consistently to my clients? Do I have a gratitude program where I'm thanking them for the trust that they've put in me by referring other people to me? Do I understand their expressed and their unexpressed needs? Am I building brand strength and reputation by being consistent in the message that I'm delivering? Those are all questions that you need to ask yourself, because TPR Nation, you know that if you're out there in the world and you're listening and talking and collaborating with other people who share your values, you get to go change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect RIA.